streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc. He's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Sean Thompson. And this is the Sean Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
I got that Schadenfreude, Squirrel. I enjoy it. When you see the skullduggery in this scandal, these welfare roach areas, I enjoy watching the lie of the altruistic communist, socialist, Marxist, or Democrat pretending to care about anybody.
California has the highest minimum wage for fast food workers in the country.
Not for long.
Well, the robots have arrived, at least in Pasadena, California. That's where the world's first ever fully autonomous AI-powered restaurant has opened.
There is no minimum wage. Now you're fired, dummy. Any more ideas? Where the frack have these idiots ever been right? Not one policy has the Democrat ever been right in. Like Obamacare, lower your insurance premium, $2,500. And still they cheer him. Married to the Predator from the Badlands. My next guest knows this all too well. Not only that Michelle Obama is ugly, but that the Democrats do not understand economics. He is a doctor of economics at the Heritage. Handsome son of a gun. E.J. Antoni.
Sean, thank you again. I love the intros. I absolutely love it. It's like the highlight of my Monday.
Thank you very much. And I hate to slam the Predator of the Badlands, but Michelle Obama's ugly, and Barack Obama didn't save us $2,500 a year. He raised it 400%, and yet still they ask him, what do you think? Only among economic illiterates can someone declare themselves a Democrat, can't they?
Yeah, Sean, exactly. I mean, look at, I heard you talking earlier about the PPP fraud, right?
Yes.
I think this is a really, really good example where Democrats will point to a program like that and say, look at all the money we spent, and they use that as the indication that the program was successful. It's the exact same way, speaking of Obama, it's the exact same way that he pointed to his presidency and how many more people had to use food stamps. And he said, isn't this a great thing that more people are on food stamps? Because they talk about it as if they are taking care of all of these people, whereas you, I, and your listeners know that the reality is economic conditions were just so lousy that people said, the heck with this, I'm not even going to look for a job anymore, and they decided to go on food stamps instead. And by the way, the PPP loans, I think, are important for another reason. Just last week, we got news from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that they had to revise down previous jobs reports for the 12 months ending in March of 2025. They had to revise down those numbers by 900,000. In other words, 900,000 jobs that we thought were created during Biden's last 10 months and Trump's first 2. Now it turns out those jobs never existed. And one of the reasons for that, Sean, has to do with a particular model they use that tries to estimate the growth of businesses in this country. But those models have been completely thrown off because they're including data that's fraudulent because it's based on PPP loans. In other words, people like Somalis in Minnesota created businesses that never actually existed during COVID and then filed the claims in order to get the PPP money. I mean, it was an absolute sham, and yet we are still haunted by the fallout today.
I've got a friend of mine who I really like, and he's a retired gentleman who used to, I'm going to embarrass him now, work in government as a lawyer, prosecutor, in the Minnesota area. And he is a gracious, smart, good guy. And he's retired, and he's down here, and we were talking, and he says, I'm listening to your shows from last week. And I said, where are you at? He goes, you're covering, rightfully Keith Ellison, who is on the take. He goes, he's on an hour. On an hour, I will protect you. And they give him $10,000. So you bought the AG for $10,000 in that meeting, but gave him who knows how much money. And you see this scandal. And and you know what he said to me? He goes, and I said to him, well, wait till you get to the show where I say, why isn't one Democrat calling for a full investigation to the billions and billions and billions that are stolen? And if you look at the news, and I scour it, I have to. from California to New York. Not a single Democrat calling for a full-throated investigation. And ironically, it's even worse in Massachusetts, where they have no disclosure. There's a former Democrat who is now calling for a complete audit. The reality is, that's not a scandal in Minnesota. That's the business model of Democrat areas, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%, Sean. It's exactly right. It's the business model. It's not as if these things are a one-off, right? This is not a what's the saying? This isn't a bug. It's actually a feature of the system. So at the end of the day, the big takeaway here is the fact that when government gets this big, the fraud just becomes too easy. It is yet another reason why when you have government that spends this much money, that is this unwieldy, it's yet another reason why it's terribly inefficient. It's not just a matter of the people responsible for spending the money are too far removed from those who are actually financing it, although that's true too, and that leads to plenty of other inefficiencies, but you also get this kind of widespread fraud. It's a big reason why, Sean, and I know we've talked about this before, but I think it bears repeating. I'm a very big advocate for getting rid of all kinds of federal programs that are paid for at the federal level, but administered at the state level. And instead, what I would rather see is hand all of those programs over to the states and reduce federal income taxes accordingly, and then allow states to raise the revenue however they want. That does two really important things, I think. Number one, it allows the states to figure out how best to raise that revenue. So if one state wants to do sales taxes, another one wants to do income taxes, another one wants to do property taxes, whatever the case may be. The other big thing, though, is the fact that the money is going to be spent closer to the people, and the coordination is closer to the people as well. When it's the states spending federal dollars, there's virtually no accountability, and there's no incentive at all to spend the money well or efficiently.
And the other issue that must be addressed is that when this is a systemic corruption issue, which is exactly what this is systemically corrupt systems inside Democrat fiefdoms. We now know 35 cents out of every dollar is welfare in Minnesota. Illinois is, I think, 1,000 times worse, but they lie about the books. They cook the numbers. So the way to circumvent all of these problems with or without Donald Trump, because the reality is we're going to have to face that there is going to be an America without Donald Trump. The only way we can do it is if we systemically fix the currency. And to me, the answer is state-issued currencies, where even the Democrat political scum that orchestrated this systemic fraud system, they don't want the currency from the states they've destroyed. And now you force them into paying the cost, the ramifications, and the consequences of having corrupt governments. Nobody wants your fracking dollars. Why isn't that talked about on an hourly basis, especially when you go on the Stuart Varney show where you were looking extremely debonair last week? They even gave you the walkout. I thought you were going to twirl like a supermodel, but this has to be fixed from the currency addressed from the states that are killing this country, because Democrat states are a cancer, an economic cancer, and it has to be cauterized and cut out. What do you think of that?
Sean, this was actually one of the really interesting things. If you go back and read some of the writings by certain founding fathers, they talked about how really once the nation gets to a certain size, it'll actually be too unwieldy. In other words, it's just too big, and the diversity in thought among the people becomes so great that you essentially can't have a unified country anymore. And I think that's one of the problems we are facing today. Again, you don't necessarily have to solve that with something like secession. You can solve it, I think, by reorienting political power in a better way, something more aligned with the original founding. But to your point, though, Sean, this is why I'm bringing this up. You have too many states today that are takers and not enough that are makers. You have far too many red states that are having to support the welfare, the fraud, and the Democrat politicians in the blue states. And it's not just the politicians individually, right? It's the whole political machine. And as a result of that, what does the federal government do? Well, one of the ways in which they respond is by just taxing everyone through inflation, by devaluing the currency, right? And they've been doing that since 1971 when Nixon closed the gold window to try to cover the massive budget shortfalls that are accrued because of all this runaway government spending.
Well, you've got the makers and you've got the takers, but what's more pervasive, as far as I'm concerned, are the liars, the bald-faced frauds and liars. You know, it's now out that Chicago Public Schools, it's $3 billion that they got for COVID. $3 billion with a B. 3,000 million gone in the wind. When the systemic area, when the area has become systemically a fiefdom, they hide with the virtue shield of occupation or the virtue shield of a service. The only way to make them reap what they sow and to make them pay the consequences is to make the people who are in on it choose to use that corrupt system through the currency of the state. And I guarantee you, there will not be a Democrat politician that wants an Illinois dollar. I'm telling you, this is the perfect fix. Not a shot fired, nothing. Make the currency attached to the state. That simple. And now we'll know. Now we'll know. Now you can't lie, right? It's like it's like giving a crackhead a credit card in his own name. Go ahead. Let me know when you can't use it anymore. Go ahead. It's the same fix. Sell it. Can you sell it for me to the Fed and all these guys? Please. We got one shot, and it's over.
Well, Sean, to a certain extent, we do this kind of, or we do something similar to it, I guess you would say. And here's what it is. We already have bonds, right? We already have the state debt that is issued state by state. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because you can look at debt issued by Illinois, debt issued by Iowa, Indiana, you name it. And you can see how one trades at a discount to another. Yeah. In other words, if I'm going to loan money to the state of Illinois, right, I'm going to demand more compensation. I'm going to demand a higher interest rate because I have less faith in Illinois being able to pay that back than I do Indiana. Now, if we roll back the clock real quick, Sean, and this is where it ties in, I think, with currency, you roll back the clock to a time when states chartered their own banks, when you didn't have a national currency, right? You had bank notes, and each individual state had banks that would issue this currency. You had all kinds of currency floating around. And again, if one state was trusted more than another, not just because of their own finances, but because of their banking rules and regulations, what would happen? One's currency would trade at a discount to another. So right. How perfect would that be to go back to that kind of a system where somebody would see Illinois currency and say, you know what? I just don't have as much faith in that because of their bad finances, because of their corruption, et cetera. And so can you imagine going to Indiana and you see a dollar in Indiana currency is the price of something, but it's $1.10 in Illinois currency.
So now I'm going to tell you exactly why this is the only solution and why the debt is it's capitalized when it's given to these mafia areas. And I'm going to tell you what it is. The people in that arena, the bond issuers and the money bundlers in Democrat areas, just like Chicago, they employ all of the children and the moron relatives of the thieving Democrat politicians. So where did Mike Madigan's family and kids, where did Dick Durbin's family and kids and the Daley's family and kids, where do they go work? They go work for the money bundlers who are issuing the debt and charging. Now, here's the flaw in this system, but we pay it. Charging areas that cannot default. By definition, a town, a municipality, a county, and even a state cannot default in America. They can't. They have the power of taxation. They can literally always pay their bills by taking other people's assets. So these swindlers, they employ the kids and they give them big bonuses and phony ghost jobs that they never have to go to. And they loan out the money at extremely high rates. So once again, only the decent in that area pay it. The scallywags, scumbags don't pay it. And that's why they all have law firms that lower property taxes and they never really pay it if you're in. When the system is so corrupt, I got a guy like the Soviet Union. You break apart the Soviet Union in little fiefdoms, it's like Illinois and Chicago and Cook County and the rest of it. But the currency, that's the difference. So I would actually limit or freeze or not issue the debt to those places. The debt would take care of itself because it would have its own currency. And the only way to flush it out is make the thieves take the destructive currency that they've destroyed as payment. Now what is it good for? Now you're like Venezuela. Bring me a wheelbarrow for bread. Instead of them taking the whole country down. They've already taken the areas down. The only reason they exist is through our federal system and the Federal Reserve System. You could break it apart without breaking the Fed apart, because that's never going to happen. But you can break it apart if you do just the simple states issue your own currencies. That's it. I love it. Come on. Granted, it's my idea, and it may be flawed and full of Swiss cheese holes, but I thought of it. Give me a little something.
No, Sean, look, I love it too. And anything you can do to decentralize these things, whether it's decentralizing power, decentralizing currency, you name it, I think that's a good thing. And how wonderful would it be, again, to go back to a time when you did have states in charge of their own currency. And look, it's not as if it would be chaos. It wasn't back then, and it wouldn't be today. In fact, it'd be even simpler today because of electronic payments and because you can send information on currencies in real time. Now, look at what we do with stocks. Now, all of us can pull out the computer in our pocket, that's our smartphone, and we can look at stock prices in real time. If you go back to when states were issuing their own currency, you know how that information had to be relayed? On a telegraph. So stocks would change on the exchange in New York or Chicago, and then someone out in California would have to wait for that information to be transferred to them. And it took a while. And that's why trading had to be done when you were physically present. It just took too long over something like a telegraph. But now everything is instant. Everything is available right away. In other words, you can see how one state's currency is trading relative to another. You can choose which one you want to hold based on which one is the most stable, retains its value, etc. It would be an absolute win for those responsible state governments, and obviously a big L for all the irresponsible
ones. But look
at
how
Illinois
you would
first among them.
And you would change the trajectory of the future federal government, because how is a lowlife like Newsom, a fraud like Whitmer, a buffoon like Hochul, Pritzker, the punchline of America, how are they going to even think about running for a federal office for the presidency when no one in the country wants the currency of the state they govern? You solve the political problems as well. It is the only solution, because what we've seen now is you see this imbecile who isn't repulsive by sight, cast from California with the hair slicked back and the suit and the handsome. You see him run as if he was a successful politician rather than the absolute unmitigated economic failure he is. Where now if he goes to Europe, wait a minute, you're from California, which used to be an incredibly great economy where all decent businesses lived, where you raised the minimum wage and now everything is automated, and you think you can run for high office, or even more so, come to Europe, get back in the rat hole thiefdom you destroyed that was once great. I think it's the only way you can solve the problem, because the thing about a con man and a liar and a fraud, also known as a Democrat, they hide under the virtue shield of legitimacy, and even they have the plausible deniability of failure because they get bailed out by all of us. I think the only way you're going to fix it is make them pay. Make them pay. Now you want to have Chicago Public Schools steal $3 billion? Steal $3 billion from your own people instead of the feds and all of us. That's how you do it. We've stumbled onto something here, EJ. You could teach an entire class on this theory.
Amen, Sean. And look, wouldn't it be a great look if all of these politicians, like the governor of Illinois that you mentioned, or the mayor in Chicago, if all of them are carrying around the cash of other states because they know that their own state's currency just can't buy as much? I mean, that would just be so beautiful, such poetic justice, right?
It's either that or we keep doing what has been done for 18 years. And this is what gets lost in the shuffle. Just 18 years ago, our national debt was $30 trillion less. This same gentleman who I was talking to, who I love, he's a great guy from Minnesota. He said, well, how much do you think of the $30 trillion has been stolen? Well, to the ordinary American, was your life changed by the money? So let's start with all of it and work down from there. I say it's all of it. Stolen in this shore, in Democrat fiefdoms, and abroad in phony wars in Ukraine. And I think I really do. The money has been stolen. And if you see that not one Democrat in these fiefdoms is outraged in Minnesota, in Illinois, not one potential candidate even discusses the waste, fraud, and abuse that we now know not just the Somalians, but everybody in California and Illinois and New York partaking in the phony entitlements. If you don't make a drastic change, who cares about a scandal? I mean, after all, it was just oral sex with that 21-year-old intern in the White House. It's not really that big of a scandal. Forget she was 21 and he was 60-year-old president. It's not that big of a deal. And that's the problem. Democrats live so fracking low. There is no definition of a scandal, let alone failure.
Well, you're not wrong, Sean.
All right, very good. Boy, oh boy.
No, but look,
that's why you're doing my eulogy. You're coming in, you're flying in for the eulogy. He wasn't wrong. Go ahead.
Amen. Sorry, real quick. I know you got to go, but as far as the numbers go, look, if you consider the amount of fraud we have found so far, and then the suspected fraud in programs like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, there are obviously big line items. It becomes very, very clear that a lot of the deficit of recent years has been probably entirely fraud. And when you consider that the debt is made up entirely of accrued deficits, you have to wonder, is that in fact true? Is it all literally due to fraud?
You're the best guest in the world because you inspire solutions for all of us. Sell that on Stuart Friday. See if Stuart can top that tomorrow in your three-piece suit. What are you going to go with? Blue, brown, gray, perhaps a silver with a gold tie? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking navy, maybe with a green tie. We'll see.
Oh, come on, Navy. It's almost springtime. Do something like a tan, like when Barack Obama, distracted from the fact he backdoor nationalized the healthcare and destroyed the future for insurance and people. He just wore a tan suit. No one talked about the reality of Obama. Go with tan.
All right. Well, that's only if I have something to hide.
All right, very. E.J. Antoni of the Heritage, thanks for always making time, brother. And more importantly, thanks for constantly putting up the fight for freedom and prosperity by articulating capitalism. Thank you, brother.
Well, thanks for having me, Sean. I appreciate it.
We'll be back with your calls and comments.
Make money, smoke cigars, and live free on The Sean Thompson Show on AM 560. The Answer.